You know, sometimes games are just too long. I mean, do I really want to get sucked into some magical world with all these wonderful characters that just have hundreds of lines of dialogue each that I just have to analyze and look over like my life depended on it? These pesky game developers have taken up too much of our time with all these stories and characters and arcs and themes and symbolisms. Whatever happened to gameplay mattering first? If your game uses any of the 25 letters of the alphabet, I am out. I have things to do. If only there was like a game genre out there that I could talk about that just specialized in almost 10-second long micro games that had no plot to them, no relevance really. It was just dumb, stupid fun. Okay, enough dragging you around. You've seen the title, and from the description I gave, it's pretty obvious what we're talking about today. A master in the microgame genre.
Yes.
A story about evil, greedy companies that make video games.
That's me.
It has a W in its name. Everyone, please welcome the topic for today, MINDWAVE.
Yes.
Subscribers of Know Us as your new topic for today. What's that? This is a game narrative focused channel. Tutorialization as a narrative tool is a topic for another day. Making a complete fool of myself. Yes, the actual topic for today is MINDWAVE, a game about a surprising amount for being just an hour-long demo released a year ago at this point. Being a game so obviously inspired by WarioWare, the unique approach this game takes to its story is utterly fascinating. Sitting within the mind of each and every person out there exist decades of stories, hundreds of little events we could describe with the utmost detail. This game, however, asks two distinct questions. What if you only had 5 seconds to see a part of a person's life, and what would you take away from it? I've always really liked this game, and seeing now I have this channel to openly discuss any game or topic of my choosing, let's just see how much I can get out of this demo. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Noah, did you really limit yourself all these years by ignoring your creative urge to discuss game narrative out of fear and embarrassment of your own writing and editing skills? And to that I say, which microgame told you? It was the one with the ducks, wasn't it? I've been trying to get rid of it for so long, get it out of my head! Now, there isn't much history to go over, as this is just a demo. I could tell you that the Kickstarter began on January 14th, and ended on February 15th, but that's about it. Also, they made like 1100% of their funding goal, but details. The game follows a girl by the name of Pandora. She's invited by a Willy Wonka-esque ticket to compete in a MINDWAVE tournament held by the game's creators, Mindscape. MINDWAVE, as in the game within the story, involves linking yourself to another person and experiencing their thoughts and memories in the form of a microgame. The last person standing after the back and forth of these games wins, and for the sake of the tournament, the loser is eliminated. After passing the calibration and tutorialization, Pandora meets up with her friend Smalls, a man with peak character design who snuck into the competition to help his friend. As Pandora doesn't have the best history playing MINDWAVE, you're then free to walk and talk around the floor, meeting the wacky folk who also found a ticket here. After chatting with only 2 people, the pools for the tournament begin with Pandora facing off against Abbie, one of the girls you can talk to on the floor. After the round ends and Pandora wins the match, the demo ends. Wait, that's it? Yeah, with this being a demo, obviously there isn't much to talk about in terms of the overall plot. It's just giving you the basics of the world and how the overall story is going to play out. So, why am I talking about this? Stepping back a bit, there are several people to talk to before the microgames begin, all of whom have their own reasons for being here. Most people are just here because they have a ticket and have nowhere else better to be, but a few of them have something more. Some people want to test their skills in MINDWAVE and see how far they can get. Others just want the prize money and nothing else. The game says these conversations are to get in the heads of your opponent and see how they think before you potentially have to fight against them, but with there being only one level, most of these conversations are just simple introductions confined to a conversation tree, with no fruit to bear just yet. However, one of these characters has more to show than just talking. Abbie, being the only character you actually play MINDWAVE against, means that her dialogue serves a greater purpose, showing how she presents herself to people and how that might differ from her internal mind. Her conversation itself is mainly an introduction to the basics of her character, that being she's an energetic, childish, joyful girl who loves what she loves to the highest extremes. Mainly in this case, she talks about her love of stuffed animals, and more specifically sewing. It establishes her love of art and animals, both traits we will see explored throughout her microgames. Along with that, we see little hints about her home life, mainly that her parents have recently relocated their family to Blackout City, the main setting of the game. While the exact reason isn't given, we can assume that with her father being unable to drive her to this tournament and with their wealthy position, their reasons for moving were work-related. Along with that, we see a surprising rebellious spirit within her as she sneaks out of her house at night to make it to this tournament, since her mother didn't want to drive her because, and I quote, "She said I kinda suck at MINDWAVE and probably wouldn't win." Wow. Now if we take this conversation as a whole, not much is to be said about who Abbie actually is. The only action we see her take is sneaking out and making her way to the tournament, but things such as how she responded to her family moving and how leaving her friend really affected her are left unanswered or given simple one-word descriptions of lonely and sad. This is fine actually as an introduction, but how are we supposed to get more out of her character if this is the only time we talk to her? Well, it's in the microgames. Each match of MINDWAVE takes place in someone else's head, in this case Abbie's. A conversation with a person can only reveal so much, especially when they only last so long. You have to take everything involving a character into account if you truly want to understand them. Okay, but first off, what is a microgame? For transparency's sake, I could not find an actual straight definition by anyone, but I feel this quote by Goro Abbie, the director of multiple WarioWare titles, can help set some ground rules. In an Iwata Ask interview for Game & Wario, Goro comments on the nature of a minigame as, quote, "If you use that term, you end up being conscious of the limitations it implies, and that has an impact on the games you can come up with. If, on the other hand, you think of each game as being its own game in its own right, you'll make them with the idea that each game can be sold individually." Unquote. A microgame is a short, game. A simple concept wrapped within simple instructions, and unlike a minigame, they don't exist within the confined structure of another game. Think a Mario Party minigame. Those only matter as they exist to the overall party. However, for each microgame in WarioWare, they do not. They are individual ideas displayed in isolation from a greater game. Pick the nose by pressing up, grab the stick by pressing A, slice the bamboo by swinging the Wii remote. You could argue that due to WarioWare's structure and the requirements to clear microgames in succession to reach a boss that they are tied to an overall gameplay structure and therefore exist within a game as a component for it to function. However, I would argue that their ability to be completed in isolation and one makes them not a minigame. You could finish dodge and jump and bite in the ways you can't finish a minigame. You can only stop playing those when a condition is met. Now, I don't mean to confine MINDWAVE to its inspirations, but I feel the established nature of WarioWare as a series gives us a good jumping off point for discussing how this game handles its microgames. WarioWare is infamous for its absurd visuals and game themes. You could sit back and tell me all you want about how each character has their own genre that they stick to and how Jimmy is the sports guy and Dribble and Splits are the sci-fi themed guys, but be honest with yourself, it's all weird junk to be weird. Which is fine, I do love WarioWare, but MINDWAVE is attempting something very different with its microgames, which is much more fascinating. Due to the nature of MINDWAVE and the linking between each of its participants, the microgames are fixed to a strict theming, that being the other person's mind. Each microgame is a memory within the person you are battling against as their thoughts are thrown at you back to back. Not only does every microgame have to play well and be properly tutorialized within the game, they also need to fit within the person you are fighting against as you delve further into your opponent's mind. So any game that might seem like a random fun concept is in reality a meditation on your opponent. The microgames, instead of coming from the desire to make a funny thing that plays well, have this top-down design philosophy. Take this character and just go in on them. Take every idea, thought, wish, hope, belief, desire, hate they have and explore one of those feelings in just 5 seconds. No time to see why they think that way or how they got to it, just move on and get to the next one. And so now, we get to Abbie once again. How does this game attempt to break past Abbie's brain and turn her memories into an open secret? Abbie's microgames are obviously very broad due to them being memories of importance to her, so I decided to break them up into groups to help our discussion. Her microgames can be split into 4 groups: life, art, internet/video games, and Jenny. And as much as I would love to just move on to the analysis about them as a whole, I can't see any way that's possible without discussing them one-on-one in what I am calling a micro-analysis. For each game, I'll put an icon in the corner dictating their grouping as I explain what the microgame is like and what it means in isolation. Number 1. Keyboard mash, a very energetic response to a photo of a cat sent by her friend Melodic Jewel. Abbie is social and likes to talk with her friends, or at the very least is good friends with one person, and enjoys talking with them enough to see this hyper response as appropriate/expected. It is also a memory that most likely stands out due to its absurd imagery and the reaction it garners from her. Number 2. Candy Catch. Abbie enjoys candy enough to the point that receiving it is a core memory that she wants to keep close to her. The person providing the candy is unseen, but as we'll explain later, we can make a solid read as to who it is. Number 3. Bunny Sort. Abbie cares about animals a lot, and assuming these are stuffed animals and not actual live blue and pink bunnies, she sees them as real to an extent. Along with that, she's meticulous in her ability to sort and control them. Her reasons for separating and placing them within these boxes are left unclear, but again, we can probably assume the reason later. Number 4, spinning ice cream. Abbie believes her own kindness and love of snacks can get her out of any issue she has. The person she's spinning the ice cream around is a candy person, showing that Abbie cares about them enough to identify them as candy, which we have established she loves. Along with that, the candy person seems uninterested in Abbie, making her ice cream attack seem less like a literal attack and more of an attempt to break down the disinterest the person has in her. Number 5, catch the kitty. Again, Abbie likes animals, but also drawing. Using her art as the setting for this microgame establishes not only that she does draw, but that she potentially uses her art to capture something, like her love of animals. Art is not an escape for Abbie, it is a tool used to get to the end of something she wants. Number 6, jump bear. Abbie is a gamer girl. Gaming is something Abbie cares about, and again, it reinforces her love of animals as she helps guide this bear over to the flag. Number 7, crane game. Okay, do I have to say it again? Abbie loves animals, as she helps another one out of the crane machine so she can do what she pleases with it. Number 8, dodge the kiss. Okay, this one I'm skipping for now because there's a lot to unpack here. Number 9, stitch bear. Oh wow, Abbie likes animals again. But again, she's helping another animal as she stitches the bear back up and wait, who's that? Is that the candy cane girl? The hair matches, so I guess it might be. It would make sense to have someone else in your mind if they're really important to you. Oh, it's Jenny! That's why I put the Jenny icon in the corner. But yeah, she shares a hobby of sewing with her friend and they both have their own style of stuffed animals. Going back to Candy Catch, I believe Jenny is the person giving the candy in the game, creating a connection through the gifts she loves, as her importance is created by their connection to candy. Number 10, brush hair. Again, Abbie enjoys being with her friends, as she helps another one in this case with her hair. She is again showcasing a desire for control, pushing it further to the hair of her friend. Along with that, I would like to point out the differences in this girl's design as opposed to Jenny. The afro puffs of Jenny have been replaced by a straight brushed out hair under Abbie's control. Along with that, the upside down cross earrings that Jenny has have been replaced by a pentagram. Now, I'm not a theologian, so I'd rather not comment on the religious implications of these two symbols out of fear of getting something wrong. Instead, I would like to point out that something has changed. While this person could be taken as Abbie brushing her own hair, or even someone entirely different, I like to see this as Abbie wishing to change her friend, again using her art to create something she wants. Someone with the opposite hair and earrings. Now why would she want the opposite of her friend if it's someone she enjoys? That's an answer for later. Number 11, run to girl. Mash the sprint after Jenny and make it to her. This establishes their friendship the clearest, but also establishes a desire. Meeting up with a friend is a typical thing to do, so the fact that this meeting in particular is something memorable means one of two things. Either this was an important meeting in and of itself that Abbie chooses to remember, or this is something memorable because it can't be easily experienced again. That, in Abbie's case, the memory has to fill in for the actual act of meeting up with her friend because it isn't something possible anymore. This is also why the microgame is presented in this retro style. As we'll explore further in other microgames, video games are where Abbie has the most control, being literally in control of a character. This memory of what should be a real-life event is then presented in this style to symbolize control, or more accurately, a desire for it. Number 12, drop block. Oh god, the gamer girls are spreading. This is another minigame that reinforces the friendship between Abbie and Jenny. They both enjoy games, and once again we see Abbie attempt to control the moment by performing a sick combo, a memory only important because she has some form of control again. Number 13, Paddle Kapu. Again, another game where Abbie has control. Not that much to be taken away from this. I could say this is a comment on her financial status, as just being a kid her family is in a privileged enough spot to afford all these games and that this is highlighting her privileged character, but that would be what I want to say, and I don't actually want to say that. Number 14, Dodgebird. Again, it is an animal game, but this time, the animals are the obstacle. This is a microgame about growth and change. The small town or personal room in which the other microgames took place is replaced by a car traveling. Again, going back to the same idea present in Run to Girl, this mundane activity must have greater significance if it is going to be here within the memories of Abbie. Because of that, I see this as Abbie moving away, leaving and avoiding the past in some way, which the game symbolizes by birds, or more generally, animals, the thing Abbie loved the most and shared with Jenny. She believes the past must be ignored or avoided to avoid feeling hurt and losing the game. But as we see from her later, this didn't work, obviously. This microgame is instead then a moment where she used her art to create a game for herself, manipulating her surroundings to believing that she had some control. Again, she uses her art to get something she wants. Number 15, care for chows. This is another mix of every theme we've discussed so far. It's animals, it's control, it's helping someone out, it's just everything reinforced. A quick thing to note about certain microgames past this point is that some of them will just be reinforcing the same themes. If care for chow appeared first, we'd then be using those other microgames as ways to reinforce that same message. It's not about what did it first, it's just about how many times we see these themes reappear. Number 16, transform. This is the most personal we see Abbie get throughout her microgames, as it's literally just her as she transforms into a Sailor Moon lookalike costume. In the conversation we had with her, she describes how she wanted to come to the tournament dressed in this costume, but it had not been finished due to her father not being home to complete it. Along with that, the microgame ends with her holding the same plush that Jenny had in the Stitch Bear game. It's Abbie pushing this desire not only for her friend, but for her father, symbolized as physical objects she relates to them, the plush and the costume respectively. She wants both of them and so draws a world in which she does, again using her art to get something she wants out of the world. Number 17, dial phone. A simple phone call to Jenny, again matching the same aesthetic of dodge, bird, and run to girl. It's a simple mundane activity made special because it isn't possible or feasible anymore. However, it is simple communication, something that unlike those other games should be repeatable. But it isn't. And now we can get back to what we talked about in Brush Hair, or more specifically Abbie's desire to make Jenny different. I believe this microgame and others like Keyboard Mash and Run to Girl show that Abbie was not only taken away from Jenny when they moved, but that she is also not allowed to talk to her anymore following the move. This is why in Brush Hair, Abbie imagines and controls someone with the opposite look of Jenny. She wants someone whom her parents would be okay with her talking to and being with. And as the conversations about her parents have already established, they control who she talks to and where she goes now that she is in Blackout City. But also, they have a reason for disliking Jenny, that being she got Abbie to sneak out of her house when they were together. Number 18. Oh my god, we're finally at the end, and it's a bubble popping minigame. This one I see is relating back to Dodge Bird, in the sense that it's another attempt to highlight Abbie moving away. What is a common item used for moving away? Bubble wrap. Abbie uses her surroundings to make a good thing out of a bad situation, using the bubble wrap as a coping mechanism. This memory becomes important because it is a moment where she wanted to be in control of herself and not rely on games, art, or even animals. Instead, using what she had around her and realizing that it could be all she gets for the time being. Okay. So what was the point of all of that? What do these microgames say about Abbie that isn't conveyed by directly talking to her? Well, the main thing I kept emphasizing about these microgames is control, or more specifically, the desire for it. These memories are moments where Abbie had control or desired it to such an extent that she manifested her surroundings to give it to her. And this is because control is constantly denied to her by her parents. She isn't allowed to go on public transit, she isn't allowed to go to the tournament, and she isn't allowed to stay in her old home. From her perspective, control and autonomy are the main things she is constantly denied, so she fantasizes about the times where she did have control, and these memories materialize themselves in the microgames. Each game is an emotional response to her surroundings, recontextualized in her own mind through her own feelings and views on the world. How does Abbie feel about being unable to see Jenny? She remembers the time she could, and takes the feeling of constraint her parents make her feel, and makes these memories into places where she could decide things for herself. Now this next point may seem a bit counter to what I was just describing, but hear me out. Abbie doesn't blame her parents directly. She doesn't fault them in her conversations, nor does she see them as an obstacle in her microgames. Think back to each microgame. What is the most common obstacle and fail state throughout them? Unfortunately, it's Abbie. She couldn't spin the ice cream, she couldn't run fast enough to Jenny, she couldn't avoid the birds, she couldn't stitch up the bear, she couldn't grab the stuffed animal out of the crane machine. The main obstacle is herself, and this is why I saved Dodge the Kiss for last. The microgame is the only time when Abbie being the obstacle is the clearest, as you actively have to avoid her kiss heart things. This is how Abbie sees herself, someone who can be over-caring and over-loving to the point of being harmful to those around her. Whether or not this is true can be taken either way, as Pandora does respond negatively to her overbearing friendship, but also with this microgame taking place within her mind, it means this is something she has internalized, and it has to be based off some experience. This is how she sees herself, as something to be avoided, and this punishment and self-disdain is seen in the final part of Abbie's game, the boss fight. You thought I forgot about it, didn't you? The boss fight in a microgame collection often differs the most from the established structure of a microgame, being isolated from the time limit and the simple instructions. Because of this, the boss fight is often the least interesting part of a microgame level. Taking the simple controls and concepts present in a microgame and applying them to a game detached from the time limit that makes a microgame so interesting means that the boss fight doesn't really amount to much. Abbie's boss fight takes place in a very abstract spot, not connected to any recognizable unrecognizable location that the others grounded themselves in. Unless, of course, this microgame is saying that Abbie is a spacefaring cube-watching being from another world, but still I don't think that's quite right. The boss fight itself sees you controlling Abbie as she attempts to climb her way out of a pit, hopping between the platforms until she reaches the top. The thing I found most interesting about this boss fight is that Abbie puts herself in this scenario. The exact amount of control Abbie has when it comes to what the microgames in her mind look like is unknown, but this game itself has her starting it by unveiling a curtain and falling to the bottom. In her own mind, putting herself in this situation is normal, it's fine, it's expected, as seen with the smile she gives as she falls. When within the pit, each of the things we have seen her enjoy during the microgames become encapsulated in rock as she jumps between them. This self-punishment I see relates to Dodge Bird, where she had to avoid her own past and the things she loves in an attempt to move on. This is how Abbie punishes herself in the moment when she feels hurt for losing her friend and her home. She blames herself for being too loving and takes away what she enjoys to try and correct herself, but as we see with the conversations had before her microgames, she acts perfectly happy. She still enjoys stuffed animals and wants to be friends with Pandora. So why have these two drastically different Abbies? Well, to show that what we take away from a character or a game is different than what they may appear to be. On the surface, we may appear to be all put together, all happy and fine, but internally we have our own struggles that aren't obvious. MINDWAVE, as in the game within the game, turns these personal feelings into an obstacle in Pandora's case. It wants you to avoid the nuances of actually being within someone's mind and seeing what they think. These microgames are just that, games. They exist to be completed, so you can hear a little jingle and move on to the next one. To break these down one by one and see what they are saying about Abbie is not the objective. Taking this small look at a person and not using it to complete the games means foregoing the established structure of MINDWAVE and its rules. By doing what I am doing right now, I am breaking the rules of MINDWAVE, taking these as more than just games. In Stephen Byron's blog on intentionality in games, called as such, they write, quote, "If I have the intention to make Mario jump yay high, it's only because I understand that Mario jumping yay high is a possible state I can achieve because I expect the game world to be persistent. The formation of my intent is predicated on my comprehension of the game world and what it allows of me. On the other hand, I could also misinterpret the world and intend something impossible in Mario 64, like pressing a button to try to shout aggro and call over my horse. In either case, I act with intention, although the intention of the latter example is left unfulfilled." Unquote. Intentional decisions by a player can be fulfilled or denied depending on how the game is created, yet you are still allowed to act with the same intentionality regardless of whether or not it is possible. MINDWAVE, as in the game within the game, punishes those who act with the intention of analyzing the person being battled against, due to the fast-paced nature of the microgames and the immediate fail state the player will reach if they do not act fast enough. However, outside of the game where you and I play it, these acts of intentionality are encouraged, turning MINDWAVE, the Steam app, against the game within itself. And so the game leaves you with two games to pick through. Do you want MINDWAVE, a fast-paced microgame bonanza where the win condition is credits and a bigger number, or do you want MINDWAVE, a trek throughout a person's subconscious as you take the form of this intruder, using their memories to understand their character inside and out? Both decisions are valid, and the game acknowledges their existence in the dialogue. Each of the choices you can make in a conversation has a color coordinated to it, pink and blue representing Pandora and Smalls respectively. Each of these choices focuses on a different aspect of the person you are talking to. Pandora and her pink questions are focused on the game itself, any strategy or reason for being at this tournament as it relates to MINDWAVE as a game, while Smalls and his blue questions deal with the person in question, any hobbies they may have mentioned or reasons they have for being in the tournament as it relates to them, not just their history with MINDWAVE. Pandora sees this game as just that, a game to be won with microgames popping up back to back one by one, while Smalls on the other hand sees this game as an examination of the person you are battling against, believing their character as they present themselves now provides context for why the microgames are the way they are. He's just like me, for real, for real. Neither one of these reads on MINDWAVE is wrong, it's just different. And I just have to say, the fact that not just one of these ideas, but all of them are communicated throughout the microgames is absolutely astounding. The game can provide these important character traits and ideas with just these short experiences in a way I have never seen. Any one of these games as just the introduction to a character could explain a lot about them, but the fact that all of them are used and the information isn't overbearing is incredible work. Also, using the complexities of invading someone's mind could be dragged out throughout a whole game, but instead MINDWAVE just lays it bare and lets you see it for what it is, and it's only possible by using everything a microgame gives you to your advantage. The time constraint of a microgame may seem like, well, a constraint, but that limitation breeds a perfect amount of information in just one game. The best example of this is Run to Girl, where the controls of mashing a key down to the visuals and the simplistic nature of the activity are all used to tell us something about Abbie. In Run to Girl's case, she's someone who values the memory of a friendship and her autonomy within it, allowing herself to move by her own accord, represented by the game visuals and the repetition and mashing. Limiting your understanding of a character just to their words means you often avoid some of their intricate traits through everything else surrounding them. People, when well written, are inherently messy. They lie, treat themselves unfairly, and can act overbearing by mistake. But those may not be told to you directly in dialogue boxes. You have to be willing to take every part of a character as important, even the weird parts you may not understand. I didn't see the bubble popping microgame as important initially, but now I see it as a way to explore Abbie's progression after moving and the way she copes with it. And if we're going to talk about everything about Abbie, then there's one final stop for us to make. Although the Sky is an absolute bop. That is all the musical analysis you were getting out of me since the last time I talked about music. I got the definition of a 3/4 time signature wrong, so let's move on to the lyrics. The intro begins by describing how despite the poor conditions around them, they can embrace some form of positivity within themselves. Something is happening, or something has happened, leading to the world itself being dark and unclear, but also there's a person within this song who wants to convince someone else to see the world as they do. The chorus reinforces how despite the poor surroundings, there's a positive spin on everything around them. It sets the fact that there is someone else within this song, someone who is truly feeling down and needs to be brought up. The person trying to convince them is saying that the good can come, that the good is already here, and you just need to see it. However, the end has an interesting thing to mention. This line of sympathy has always stuck out to me unlike the rest of the song, which is an attempt to get the person to see this world as they do through the promise of it appearing colorful and grandiose. It's the person saying they recognize the situation the other is in and relate to it. They know it feels this way, but feeling isn't always the truth, that sometimes despite the way things look, there is something greater to be seen. The song itself is a pleasant story about a person caring for another, trying to get them to see the world as they do in a better light for their own sake. But still the question of identity is raised. Who are the people talking in this song?
It's Abbie and Jenny.
I know it's Abbie and Jenny, but who is who? Okay, because of how caring Abbie is characterized in the microgames and in her conversation, the answer might appear to be Abbie as the voice of reason, the one convincing the other person, who we would then assume to be Jenny. However, an important thing to note about Abbie is that her mind rarely, if ever, pictures just herself. There is always a connection to someone else. Her father, Jenny, or even the animals. This is why I called out the line of empathy earlier. I don't believe Abbie would use herself as an example in an attempt to be empathetic. She cares more about the other person first and foremost. Because of that, I see the song as being from Jenny's perspective. She is the one attempting to convince Abbie to see the good in a situation because of how things may appear to her. If Abbie is seeing the world as gray, then it's up to Jenny to help her. And why might the world be appearing gray? Why, because Abbie is moving away and leaving Jenny, and potentially won't be able to talk to her anymore after the move. It's someone close enough to Abbie to know how she sees the world, that being in rainbows and sunshine, taking an empathetic approach to try and help Abbie before they split apart, making these final promises of being together. It's saying to appreciate the time we have left. Don't think about how it might be gone soon, just exist in the now. I like to think that Jenny would see MINDWAVE as Pandora does, just a game to be finished. MINDWAVE is a demo. It is an inherently incomplete experience that I invested in under the hope that one day it would be completed. My single run-through of the demo from start to finish lasted me 25 minutes, and yet within that time frame, the game was able to introduce a character and fully develop them within that time alone. On top of providing a complex dual narrative about the invasion of a person's mind and our autonomy within games. I said earlier that WarioWare's theming is random and weird for the sake of it, and while I still believe that to an extent, the fact is these games would be less playable if they were too weird and too random. There is a context in which these games exist, and without it, they would be worse off. Replacing picking the nose with putting a carrot up some headphones would make the game worse off. It needs that context of our understanding of finger go up nose to function. However, this context is a gameplay issue first and foremost. Without it, the games would fail to function. MINDWAVE takes the same idea and applies it to the characters the story is about. It reapplies the required context of a microgame and uses it not to make something playable, but to tell a story. It's the classic dilemma of games criticism. We all know that Mario jumps, but we never ask why Mario jumps. We all know that grab means to pick up the stuffed animal, but we never ask why we are picking up the stuffed animal. And MINDWAVE is able to answer that question and ask why we never ask it in the first place in just 5 seconds. Now, why did it take me 29 minutes? Because there are a lot of questions, man, I don't know.